Hello everyone, welcome back. This is a story from Her Silent Revenge, and it has taken a turn you absolutely didn't expect. Let's begin.
I was abandoned by my parents at 11 years old. They favored my older sister, took her with them, and left me alone to survive for 6 days. My wealthy uncle found me and saved my life. 20 years later, when my uncle passed away leaving an $8.7 million estate, they came back. They showed up at his funeral pretending to grieve. They sat at the will reading with greedy eyes. The lawyer read my uncle's will. They abandoned her. They deserve nothing. They screamed in protest. I sat in silent victory. I'm so grateful you're here. Before we start, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. Quick note, this story includes some fictional elements for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people or places is coincidental, but the message about family and justice is entirely real. Let's begin. The cursor blinks on the empty screen. Outside my apartment window, Seattle's January rain drums a steady rhythm against the glass, the same gray, relentless rain that has defined every winter I've known in this city. 20 years. 20 years since everything changed on a November afternoon just like this one, when I learned that family isn't always the people who share your blood. My fingers hover over the keyboard. The document title reads, Found a Memoir by Maya Lawson. I'm 31 years old now, a journalist at the Seattle Times, and I've written hundreds of stories about strangers, about injustice, about people who deserve to have their voices heard. But this story, this one has been living inside me for 2 decades waiting. It's time to tell it. November 2005. I was 11 years old. I woke up to silence. That's what I remember most, not the absence of my parents or my sister, but the quality of the quiet. Our house on Capitol Hill was never silent. Dad's talk radio always echoed from the kitchen by 6:30. Mom's heels clicked across the hardwood as she got ready for work. Vanessa, my older sister, would be blow-drying her hair, singing off-key to whatever pop song was on the radio. But that Tuesday morning, there was nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on 15th Avenue. I padded downstairs in my pajamas, my bare feet cold against the hardwood. Mom? No answer. Dad? The kitchen was empty. Clean. Too clean. No breakfast dishes, no coffee cups, no evidence anyone had been there at all. My backpack sat by the door where I'd left it the night before, but Vanessa's was gone. That's when I saw the note. It was stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like the Space Needle, one of those touristy things Mom bought when we first moved to Seattle. The handwriting was my father's quick and careless. And we'll be back soon. 4 words. No explanation. No, we love you, or don't worry. Just a promise that even at 11, I somehow knew was a lie. I stood there staring at that note for what felt like hours. Then I made myself a bowl of cereal Lucky Charms because that's what we had, and I ate it at the kitchen table alone, convincing myself this was normal. Maybe there was an emergency. Maybe Grandma was sick, and they had to leave early. Maybe they'd be back by the time I got home from school. I went to school. I came home. The house was still empty. The first day I waited. I did my homework. I watched TV. I kept checking my mom's cell phone number, but it went straight to voicemail. Dad's too. The second day, I started to panic. I called Vanessa's phone. She was 16 and had just gotten it for her birthday, but it was disconnected. I searched the house for clues. Their bedroom closet was half empty. Vanessa's room looked like it had been ransacked. Drawers left open, clothes gone. Her favorite posters ripped off the walls. The third day, I walked to the library after school because I didn't want to go home to the silence. I sat in the children's section pretending to read until the librarian, a kind woman with gray hair and glasses, asked if I was okay. I lied and said yes. The fourth day, I started eating whatever was left in the pantry. Crackers. Peanut butter. A can of soup I heated on the stove, terrified I'd burn the house down. The fifth day, I stopped going to school. I was afraid that if I left, they'd come back and I'd miss them. I was afraid that if I left, someone would notice I was alone and take me away. So I stayed. I waited. By the 6th day, I understood. They weren't coming back. The rain had started again. Typical Seattle November weather, gray and cold and endless. I'd run out of food except for a box of stale crackers, so I'd walk to the library again, hoping maybe Patterson, the librarian, would offer me another granola bar like she had the day before. She did. I ate it slowly, making it last, and then I stayed until closing time reading the same chapter of Bridge to Terabithia over and over without absorbing a single word. When the library finally closed at 6, I had no choice but to go home. I walked slowly, my backpack heavy on my shoulders, my hands shoved deep in my coat pockets. The streetlights were just beginning to flicker on, casting long shadows across the wet pavement. I turned onto Belmont Avenue, counting the cracks in the sidewalk, a game I used to play with Vanessa when we were younger. That's when I heard the car. It was a black sedan moving slowly, almost cautiously. At first I thought it was just someone looking for a parking spot. There were never enough on our street, but then it pulled up beside me and stopped. The window rolled down. Maya! I froze. My heart hammered in my chest. Every stranger danger lesson I'd ever learned screamed at me to run, but something in the man's voice made me pause. It was familiar. Not quite safe, but not dangerous either. I took a step back, peering into the car. The driver was a man in his mid-40s with dark hair starting to gray at the temples and kind eyes that creased at the corners. He wore a suit, navy blue, slightly rumpled, and he looked worried. "Maya, it's me," he said gently. "Your Uncle Dennis." Uncle Dennis. The name registered somewhere in the back of my mind, my father's younger brother, the one who lived in Seattle, the one we saw once a year at Thanksgiving maybe, the one who always asked me about school and actually listened to my answers. I stared at him and something inside me cracked. "They're gone," I whispered. He nodded slowly, his expression shifting from worry to something that looked like anger, not at me, but at them. "I know," he said. "Get in, Maya. Let's get you somewhere warm." I should have asked questions. I should have demanded to know how he found me, why he was there, where my parents were. But I was 11 years old, and I was so tired of being alone. So I got in the car. I didn't know it then. But that moment, that choice would change everything. The stranger in the black sedan, the uncle I barely knew, would become the only father I'd ever truly have. But that part of the story that comes next. The car smelled like leather and coffee. Clean leather, the kind that doesn't have cracks or stains, and fresh coffee from a travel mug sitting in the cup holder. The dashboard glowed a soft amber in the fading daylight, and the radio played low some jazz stations, smooth and unfamiliar. I pressed myself against the passenger door, my backpack clutched on my lap like a shield, watching this man who called himself my uncle. Dennis Grayson, Dad's younger brother. The one who made something of himself in Seattle, the one Dad only mentioned when he was drunk and bitter, usually followed by words like, "thinks he's better than us," or "too good for family." If he was too good for family, why was he here? "When's the last time you ate?" Dennis asked. His voice was quiet, careful, like he was trying not to startle a stray cat. I thought about the granola bar from Mrs. Patterson, the crackers for breakfast. "This morning?" I lied. He glanced at me, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not quite pity, something sharper, more like anger, but not at me. "Right," he said softly. He put the car in drive. "Let's fix that." We didn't go back to my house. Instead, Dennis drove through Capitol Hill, down Broadway with its bright storefronts and coffee shops, then west toward Belltown. The city blurred past my window people with umbrellas, buses pulling up to stops, the orange glow of streetlights reflecting off wet pavement. I should have been scared. I should have demanded answers. Where were my parents? Where was Vanessa? Why hadn't anyone called? But I was so tired. Tired of being scared, tired of being alone, tired of pretending I was okay. "Your father didn't tell me," Dennis said suddenly, "that they were planning to leave." I looked at him. Do you know where they went?" His jaw tightened. "Florida. Your father called me 2 days ago, said they needed a fresh start." He said the words like they tasted bad. "He asked me to check on you. 2 days ago. They'd been gone for 6 days, and Dad only called Dennis 2 days ago. Did he say when they're coming back?" My voice cracked. Dennis was quiet for a long moment. Then, "No, Maya, he didn't." The truth of it settled over me like the rain, inevitable, inescapable. They'd left me on purpose. And Dennis, the uncle I barely knew, was the only one who came. The 5 Point Cafe sat on the corner of Cedar Street, a hole-in-the-wall diner with neon signs in the window, and a smell that made my stomach growl the moment we walked in. Bacon, coffee, toast, food. Sit anywhere. Called a waitress with red hair and a tired smile. Dennis chose a booth near the back. I slid into the cracked vinyl seat, my backpack beside me, still holding onto it like it might disappear if I let go. "Order whatever you want," Dennis said, handing me a laminated menu. I stared at it. Burgers? Pancakes? Eggs? When was the last time someone told me to order whatever I wanted? "I'm not very hungry," I whispered. Another lie. I was starving. Dennis set down his menu. "Maya." He waited until I looked up. "You don't have to pretend with me. You're 11 years old, you've been alone for almost a week, and I'm guessing you've been living on crackers and whatever was left in the pantry. So let's skip the part where you act like you're fine, okay?" My throat tightened. I nodded. "Good. Now what sounds good?" "The pancakes." I said it like a question. "Then get the pancakes, and eggs, and bacon, and orange juice." He flagged down the waitress. "She'll have the breakfast combo extra bacon, and I'll take the same plus coffee." The food came fast stacks of golden pancakes, crispy bacon, scrambled eggs, and a glass of orange juice so cold it made my teeth hurt. I ate slowly at first, trying to be polite, but then hunger took over, and I just ate. I ate until my stomach didn't hurt anymore, until the gnawing emptiness finally quieted. Dennis didn't say anything. He just drank his coffee and watched me with that same careful expression, like he was trying to figure out a puzzle. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" he asked finally. "Why didn't you call someone, a teacher, a neighbor, 911? I pushed a piece of pancake around my plate. "I thought they'd come back," I whispered. "And if I told someone, they'd take me away. Put me in foster care or something. I thought if I just waited..." "You thought they'd come back for you." I nodded. Dennis's hand tightened around his coffee mug. When he spoke again, his voice was low, controlled. "Your father made a choice, Maya. A terrible, selfish choice. But you didn't do anything wrong. Do you understand me? You didn't do anything wrong." I wasn't sure I believed him, but I wanted to. We went back to my house after that. Dennis waited in the car while I packed clothes. Books, my toothbrush, the stuffed bear I'd had since I was 6, that I was probably too old for but couldn't leave behind. The house felt even emptier now, like it knew I wasn't coming back. I locked the door with the spare key hidden under the mat, and Dennis drove us across the city to Queen Anne. His house, if you could call it that, sat on a quiet street lined with old trees and expensive cars. It was tall and narrow, painted pale blue with white trim, the kind of house I'd only ever seen in movies. "This is where you live?" I asked. "Yeah." He grabbed my backpack from the trunk. "Come on, I'll show you your room." "Your room? Not the guest room. Your room." The room was on the second floor, painted soft gray with a big window that looked out over the street. The bed was made with crisp white sheets and a navy blue comforter, and there was a desk in the corner, empty and waiting. It was clean. Too clean. Like a hotel room. "Bathrooms across the hall," Dennis said. "Towels are in the closet. If you need anything, my room's at the end of the hall." He paused in the doorway. "You don't have to be afraid, Maya. You're safe here." I nodded, not trusting my voice. He left, and I stood in the middle of the room, still holding my backpack. Slowly, I set it down. I took off my shoes. I sat on the edge of the bed carefully, like the mattress might break if I moved too fast. I sat there for a long time, too afraid to lie down, too afraid to wrinkle the perfect sheets. I'm not sure how much time passed, maybe an hour, maybe more, before I heard footsteps in the hall. Dennis appeared in the doorway now, in sweatpants and a faded University of Washington t-shirt. He looked at me, still sitting upright on the edge of the bed, my hands folded in my lap. A small, tired smile tugged at his mouth. "You gonna sleep sitting up all night?" Morning light filtered through the kitchen window, turning everything soft and golden. I stood in the doorway watching Dennis pour orange juice into a real glass, not plastic, not a coffee mug, but actual glassware, the kind that looked expensive and breakable. He set it on the kitchen table next to a plate of scrambled eggs and toast. "You hungry?" he asked, not looking up. I nodded and slid into the chair, my hands folded in my lap. The glass sat in front of me, gleaming. I didn't touch it. Dennis noticed. He always noticed. He sat down across from me, his own coffee mug in hand, and gestured to the glass. "It's for you." "I know." My voice came out small. It's really nice. What if I break it?" He was quiet for a moment, then set down his mug. "Maya, things exist to be used, not feared. That glass, it's just a glass. If it breaks, we'll get another one. But if you never use it because you're afraid, then what's the point of having it?" I stared at the juice, my throat tight. "Go on," he said gently. "Drink it." I picked up the glass. It was heavier than I expected, solid in my hand. The juice was cold and sweet, and when I set it back down carefully, so carefully it didn't break. Dennis smiled. "See, you belong here, Maya, and so does that glass." The first weeks were strange. Not bad, just different. Dennis had rules, but they weren't the kind of rules I was used to. No yelling, no slamming doors, no tiptoeing around trying to guess what mood someone was in. His rules were simple. Do your homework. Tell me if something's wrong. If you break something, we'll fix it together. That last one confused me at first. At my old house, breaking something meant hiding it, lying about it, hoping no one noticed until the anger had passed. But Dennis meant it. When I accidentally knocked over a potted plant on the second day, scattering dirt across the hardwood floor, I froze, waiting for the explosion. Instead, Dennis just handed me a dustpan. "Happens to me all the time," he said. "I'm terrible with plants." We cleaned it up together. He didn't say another word about it. It took me a while to understand what he was really teaching me. One evening in late November, I was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework when Dennis came home from work. He set his briefcase by the door, loosened his tie, and opened the fridge. "You want a snack?" he called. "I'm okay," I said automatically. He appeared in the doorway, an apple in one hand. "Maya, if you're hungry, eat. You don't have to wait for permission." "But what if you were saving it for something?" He came over and sat down next to me, his expression serious. "Listen to me carefully, okay? If something is in this house, it belongs to everyone who lives here. That means it belongs to you, too. The food, the glasses, the furniture, all of it. You don't have to ask. You don't have to wait. This is your home now. Your home." I nodded, even though I wasn't sure I believed it yet. But I wanted to. The first time someone from school called Dennis my dad, I didn't correct them. It was mid-December, and there was a parent-teacher conference. I told Dennis he didn't have to go. I was used to my parents skipping them or showing up late and distracted. But he just looked at me like I'd said something ridiculous. "Of course I'm going," he said. "You're my kid now." At the conference, my teacher, Ms. Turner, shook Dennis's hand and smiled. "It's so nice to finally meet Maya's father. She's a wonderful student." Dennis didn't correct her. He just nodded and said, "Thank you. We're very proud of her." Later that week, he took me to get my eyes checked, then the dentist, then a haircut at a real salon, not the cheap place in a strip mall where Mom used to take me. The stylist asked what I wanted, and I just stared at myself in the mirror, not sure how to answer. "She'd like a trim," Dennis said, "and maybe some layers." "What do you think, Maya?" I thought I'd never had anyone ask me what I wanted before. "Layers sound good," I whispered. When we left, my hair felt lighter, bouncier. Dennis caught me looking at my reflection in a shop window and grinned. "Looks good," he said. It was such a small thing, but it mattered. Christmas came quietly. Dennis asked if I wanted to invite anyone over, friends, classmates, but I didn't really have any yet. So it was just the two of us. He made pancakes for breakfast and let me pick the movie we watched. At some point in the afternoon, he handed me a small wrapped box. "Go ahead," he said. "Open it." Inside was a journal, a real one, bound in soft brown leather with thick cream-colored pages that felt expensive under my fingertips. My name was embossed on the cover in gold letters, Maya Lawson. "I thought you might want a place to write," Dennis said. "For your thoughts, your stories, whatever you need to get out." I ran my fingers over my name, feeling the indentations. "Thank you," I managed. "You're welcome, kid." Later that night, after Dennis had gone to bed, I sat at the desk in my room, and opened the journal. The first page was blank waiting. For a long time, I just stared at it. Then, almost without thinking, I pulled out my phone. I hadn't looked at social media since I'd left my old house. I wasn't sure why I did it now, maybe curiosity, maybe masochism, but I typed in my mother's name and scrolled through her recent posts. There they were. My parents, Vanessa, all smiles in front of a palm tree. New beginnings in sunny Florida. Another post, the three of them at the beach, at a restaurant, at someone's Christmas party. Not a single picture of me. Not one mention that they'd left a daughter behind. I closed the app, my hands shaking. Then I opened the journal and picked up a pen. My handwriting looked small and careful on the expensive paper, but I wrote it anyway. December 25, 2005. I am in this house. I don't know if I belong here yet. I don't know if Uncle Dennis really wants me or if he's just doing this because no one else would. But he gave me this journal. He gave me a room. He gave me a glass of orange juice in real glassware and told me I was allowed to use it. So I'm writing this down because maybe if I write it enough times, I'll start to believe it. I am in this house, and maybe someday this house will feel like home. I closed the journal and set it on the desk next to the lamp Dennis had bought me so I could read at night. Outside snow was starting to fall, the first snow of the season, soft and quiet against the window. I didn't know it then, but those pages, that journal, would become my backbone. The place I'd turn to when everything fell apart, when the battles came, when I needed to remember who I was and where I'd come from. But that part of the story, that came later. For now, I was just a girl in a house on a quiet street in Queen Anne, learning what it meant to be cared for, learning what it meant to belong. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself hope. 6 months. That's how long I had before everything fell apart again. 6 months of ordinary mornings, Dennis making coffee while I ate cereal at the kitchen table, arguing about whether I needed a jacket. I always did. Seattle spring was deceptive. 6 months of parent-teacher conferences where Ms. Turner smiled and said I was really coming out of my shell. 6 months of quiet evenings when Dennis helped me with homework or we watched Jeopardy and competed to see who could answer fastest. 6 months of feeling safe. Then on a Saturday morning in May, someone knocked on the door. I was sprawled on the living room floor, working on a book report about The Giver, my journal open beside me for notes. Dennis was in the kitchen, humming something off-key as he made lunch. The knock was loud, insistent, 3 sharp raps that made me look up. "I'll get it," Dennis called. I went back to my report, but something about the knock felt wrong. Too urgent, too aggressive. Then I heard the voice. "Where is she? Where's my daughter?" I froze. That voice, I knew that voice. I hadn't heard it in 6 months, but I knew it. My mother. I scrambled to my feet as Dennis appeared in the doorway, his face tight. "Maya, stay here." But I couldn't. My legs moved on their own, carrying me to the entryway where Dennis stood blocking the door, his body tense. Beyond him, I saw them. My father, Stephen, looking older and more tired than I remembered. My mother, Rosalie, dressed in a crisp blouse and slacks, her makeup perfect, her expression frantic. And behind them, Vanessa, 16, now taller, her arms crossed and her eyes on the ground. "Maya." Mom's voice cracked. "Oh my God, Maya, we've been looking everywhere for you." I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was stare. "Mr. Lawson," Dennis said, his voice cold and controlled. "Mrs. Lawson, you need to leave." "Leave?" Dad's face flushed red. "You kidnapped our daughter and you're telling us to leave." The word hit me like a slap. Kidnapped. "I didn't kidnap anyone," Dennis said evenly. "Maya's been in my care because you abandoned her. You left her alone in that house for 6 days. "That's a lie," Mom pushed forward, trying to see past Dennis. "Maya, sweetie, we went to handle some business in Florida. We tried to call, but the lines were down, and by the time we got back, you were gone. 6 months ago," I heard myself say. My voice sounded strange, distant. "You left 6 months ago." Mom's face crumpled. "We came back for you. We went to the house, but you weren't there. We called everyone, the school, the police, but no one would tell us where you were. We've been searching, baby. We've been so worried." "That's enough." Dennis's voice was steel. "You're not taking her. If you want to contest custody, you'll do it through the proper legal channels. Now get off my property before I call the police." "Call them," Dad said, pulling out his phone. "We already have. The police arrived 12 minutes later. I know because I watched the clock on the wall, each second stretching into an eternity, while Dennis kept me behind him while my parents stood on the porch, while Vanessa finally looked at me with something that might have been guilt. 2 officers, a tall man with graying hair and a younger woman with kind eyes, took statements. They separated us, Dennis, in the living room, my parents on the porch, me in the kitchen with the female officer whose name tag read Martinez. Maya, Officer Martinez said gently, sitting across from me at the table, "Can you tell me how you ended up here?" I told her everything. The note on the fridge, 6 days alone. Dennis finding me. The way he'd taken care of me, food, school, doctors, everything. I told her about the orange juice glass and the journal and the parent-teacher conferences. I told her about the social media posts from Florida, the pictures of my family smiling at the beach while I'd been eating stale crackers and wondering if anyone was coming back. Officer Martinez wrote it all down, her expression neutral, but her eyes soft. "And how do you feel about your uncle?" she asked. "Do you feel safe with him?" "Yes." My voice didn't shake. "He's the only one who came for me." She nodded slowly. "Okay, Maya, thank you for being honest. When the police left an hour later, they didn't arrest Dennis. They didn't make me go with my parents. They just said the case would be reviewed and that Children's Protective Services would be in touch. My parents left too, but not before my father shouted from the porch, "This isn't over. You can't just steal someone's kid." Dennis closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it for a long moment, his eyes shut. "Dennis." My voice was small. He opened his eyes and looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before: fear. Not for himself, for me. "It's gonna be okay," he said, but I wasn't sure either of us believed it. The letter arrived a week later. It was printed on heavy cream-colored paper, with an embossed letterhead, Blackwood and Associates Attorneys at Law. Dennis read it at the kitchen table while I sat across from him, my stomach churning. When he finished, he set it down carefully, his jaw tight. "What does it say?" I whispered. He looked at me for a long moment, then slid the letter across the table. "You should read it." My hands shook as I picked it up. "Dear Mr. Grayson, we represent Mr. Stephen Lawson and Mrs. Rosalie Lawson in the matter of their daughter, Maya Lawson. Our clients have retained our services to pursue full custody of their minor child, whom you are currently harboring without legal authority. Our clients allege that you removed Maya from their home without consent and have since prevented all contact between Maya and her family. Furthermore, we have reason to believe that your relationship with Maya may be inappropriate in nature." I stopped reading, my vision blurred. Inappropriate. The word felt like poison. "They're lying," I said, my voice breaking. "They're lying. I know." Dennis reached across the table and took the letter from my hands. "I know Maya, but they're going to make this ugly. They're going to say terrible things, and we're going to have to fight them, legally, in court." "What?" I whispered. "Why are they doing this?" Dennis's expression was grim. "Keep reading." I picked up the letter again, forcing myself to focus. "Inappropriate in nature. We demand the immediate return of Maya to her parents' custody, along with compensation in the amount of $100,000 for emotional distress, legal fees, and damages incurred during this period. Failure to comply will result in criminal charges for kidnapping and custodial interference. Sincerely, Gerald Blackwood-esque. $100,000. They wanted money. "They don't want me back," I said numbly. "They want to get paid." Dennis's hand clenched into a fist on the table, but his voice stayed calm. "We're going to fight this. I've already called a lawyer, a good one. His name is Jonathan Pierce, and he's going to help us. But Maya..." He paused, his eyes meeting mine. "This is going to be hard. They're going to ask you questions. They're going to try to make you doubt yourself, doubt me. Are you sure you want to do this?" I thought about the 6 days alone, the note on the fridge, the social media posts from Florida, the orange juice glass, the journal with my name on it. "Yes," I said, "I'm sure." Jonathan Pierce's office was downtown on the 15th floor of a glass building with a view of Elliott Bay. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with dark-rimmed glasses and a calm, steady presence that reminded me a little of Dennis. He shook my hand like I was an adult. "Maya, it's good to meet you." We sat in a conference room with a long, polished table, and Mr. Pierce explained what would happen. Depositions, court hearings, a custody evaluation. My parents would have their lawyer. We would have ours, and in the middle of it all, I would have to tell my story. "Maya," Mr. Pierce said, leaning forward, "you're going to have to testify. That means sitting in a courtroom, answering questions, and telling the judge what happened. It won't be easy. Mr. Blackwood, your parents' lawyer, is going to try to confuse you to make you second-guess yourself. He might even try to make you look like you're lying. My throat felt tight. Why would he do that? Because it's his job to defend your parents, and the best way to do that is to discredit you. He paused. But here's the thing, the truth is on our side. All you have to do is tell it exactly as it happened. Can you do that? I looked at Dennis. He nodded just once, his eyes steady. I turned back to Mr. Pierce. Yes, I said, I'll tell the truth. Susan Flores arrived on a Thursday afternoon in early June, carrying a leather folder thick with papers and wearing an expression that gave nothing away. She was maybe 40, with short dark hair and wire-rimmed glasses, dressed in a gray pantsuit that looked professional and slightly rumpled. Mr. Grayson, she said, shaking Dennis's hand, I'm Susan Flores with Child Protective Services. I'm here to conduct a home evaluation. I stood behind him in the entryway, my stomach twisting into knots. 3 months of waiting, of having our lives examined, of hoping someone would see the truth. The home visit took 2 hours. Susan inspected my room, opening the closet, checking the smoke detector, running her hand over the desk. She asked about my bedtime homework routine, whether I felt safe. Her voice was neutral, clinical, like she was checking boxes on a form. Do you have your own space here? She asked. Yes. I gestured to the desk, the bookshelf, the journal. This is my room. She made a note. Then she interviewed me alone. Dennis waited downstairs while Susan asked the questions I'd been dreading. Why did I want to stay with Dennis? Did I miss my parents? Had Dennis ever hurt me, made me uncomfortable, done anything inappropriate? No, I said. Never. He's the only one who came for me. Susan's expression didn't change, but she wrote it down. The investigation didn't stop at our house. Over the next few weeks, Susan visited my school and spoke with Ms. Turner, who brought my file report cards, attendance records, behavior notes, and explained how I'd been withdrawn and anxious when the school year started, but had flourished since living with Dennis. Susan also talked to our neighbor, Mrs. Garcia, the elderly woman next door who told her I'd arrived last November, looking like a lost little ghost, and had transformed into a happy, healthy child. That man's done right by her, Mrs. Garcia said later, patting my hand. I told that CPS lady the truth. But Susan didn't just rely on interviews. She collected evidence. She requested the note my parents had left. We'll be back soon. She pulled my report cards from the previous year when my grades had been slipping. She got the phone records showing my parents had never called, never texted, never tried to reach me in those 6 days. She reviewed the medical records, the eye exam, the dentist appointment, the checkup with Dr. Collins. She even found the social media posts, my mother's Facebook, my father's Instagram, showing them smiling in Florida during the months they claimed they'd been searching for me. Not a single photo of me, not one. 8 weeks after Susan's first visit, Jonathan Pierce called. I was doing summer reading when Dennis answered, his voice calm but tense. Yes, and what does it say? He listened, then glanced at me, and I saw relief shift across his face. Thank you, Jonathan. We'll see you next week. He hung up and sat down on the couch. Susan submitted her report to the court. She's recommending that I be granted legal guardianship. The words hit all at once, and I felt like I might cry. She believes us. She believes the evidence. Dennis said gently, the note the phone records the medical care, your progress at school. She wrote that you've thrived under my care and that returning you to your parents would be detrimental to your well-being. Detrimental. It meant harmful. So I get to stay. We still have to go to court, Dennis said. But this is a good sign, Maya, a really good sign. Nothing was final yet. Nothing was safe. The court date arrived on a gray Monday morning in late August. I woke up early, too anxious to sleep, and put on the navy blue dress Dennis had helped me pick out. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the girl staring back. You look great, Dennis said from the doorway, wearing a charcoal gray suit. Are you scared? Terrified, I admitted. Me too, but we're going to get through this. We drove downtown in silence. The King County Courthouse loomed ahead, tall, imposing, built from stone and glass. Jonathan Pierce met us at the entrance, his expression calm. Judge Whitman's fair, he said. He's already read Susan's report, and from what I hear, he's skeptical of your parents' claims. Just tell the truth, Maya. We walked through security and up to the 3rd floor where the family court waited. The hallway was lined with wooden benches, fluorescent lights humming overhead. That's when I saw them. My parents sat on a bench near the courtroom door, Gerald Blackwood beside them in an expensive suit. My mother's makeup was perfect, her expression sorrowful. My father looked grim, arms crossed, and Vanessa stood a few feet away, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the floor. The moment my mother saw me, her face crumbled. "Maya, don't," Dennis said quietly, stepping between us. "Don't talk to her." Mr. Blackwood stood. "Mr. Grayson, I'd advise you to stay away from my niece." For a long moment, no one moved. Then the courtroom doors opened and a bailiff called, "Lawson custody case. All parties please enter." Dennis looked down at me, his hand on my shoulder. "Ready?" I thought about the 6 days alone, the note on the fridge, the social media posts, the orange juice glass, the journal, Susan's report, the truth. I looked back at my parents. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. My father's jaw was tight, and Vanessa glanced at me just once, guilt written all over her face. "No," I said honestly, "but let's do it anyway." The courtroom smelled like old wood and furniture polish. High ceilings stretched overhead and tall windows let in gray morning light that made everything look serious and somber. I sat at a polished oak table beside Dennis and Jonathan Pierce, my hands folded in my lap to stop them from shaking. Across the aisle, my parents sat with Gerald Blackwood, their faces carefully composed. Judge Harold Whitman entered, a man in his 60s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, and everyone stood. When he sat, we sat. When he spoke, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. "This court is now in session." His voice was deep and steady. He looked down at the file in front of him, then up at me. "Miss Lawson, I want you to know that I've read every document in this case. I've reviewed the CPS report, the witness statements, and the evidence from both sides. Today I will hear from everyone involved, and then I will make a decision that is in your best interest. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor," I whispered. His expression softened slightly. "Good, because Miss Lawson, I will hear you." The first to testify were my parents. My mother took the stand first, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, as Gerald Blackwood asked her questions in a gentle, sympathetic voice. She explained how they'd gone to Florida for a business opportunity, a chance to start over to build a better life for the family. She said they'd planned to bring me along once everything was settled, but there had been miscommunications, missed calls, confusion. "We tried to reach Maya," she said, her voice breaking, "every day, but the phone lines weren't working, and by the time we got back, she was gone. It was a good performance, convincing even. If I hadn't lived through it, I might have believed her." Then Jonathan Pierce stood for cross-examination. "Mrs. Lawson," he said calmly, "you testified that you tried to call Maya every day. Is that correct?" "Yes. And yet phone records show that neither you nor your husband called the home number even once during the 6 days Maya was alone. Can you explain that?" My mother's face paled. The lines must have been down. The phone company has no record of any service interruptions during that time." Jonathan pulled out a document and handed it to the judge. "In fact, Mrs. Lawson, your phone records show multiple outgoing calls during that period to restaurants, to friends, to a real estate agent in Tampa, just not to your daughter." My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. Jonathan wasn't finished. "You also testified that you returned to Seattle to look for Maya. When was that?" We came back as soon as we could. According to your social media posts, you were in Florida for 5 months after leaving Maya. 5 months of photos at the beach, at restaurants, at holiday parties. Not a single post mentioning a missing daughter. Why is that Mrs. Lawson? Silence. My father's testimony went no better. Jonathan dismantled every lie with calm precision: the phone records, the timeline, the Facebook posts, the lack of any police report filed for a missing child. By the time my father stepped down, his face was red and his jaw was clenched. Then it was our turn. Susan Flores testified first, her voice steady and professional. She explained the home evaluation, the evidence she'd collected, the interviews she'd conducted. In my professional opinion, Maya has thrived under Mr. Grayson's care. She is safe, healthy, and happy. Returning her to her biological parents would not be in her best interest. Mrs. Garcia came next, her voice warm and certain. I've lived next door to Mr. Grayson for 10 years. He's a good man, and that little girl, she was lost when she first arrived. Now she smiles. She plays. She's home. Miss Turner spoke about my transformation at school, the improved grades, the confidence, the friendships I'd started to build. Maya is a different child than she was a year ago. She feels safe now. That matters. And then Dennis took the stand. He didn't cry. He didn't plead. He just told the truth, how he'd found me walking home from the library, how I'd been alone for 6 days, how I'd been afraid and hungry and abandoned. He explained the parent-teacher conferences, the medical appointments, the quiet evenings, helping with homework. He talked about the orange juice glass and the journal and the way I'd slowly started to trust him. I didn't plan to become a father, Dennis said quietly. But Maya needed someone, and I wasn't going to walk away. She deserves better than that. Finally, it was my turn. I walked to the witness stand on legs that felt like they might give out. The bailiff swore me in, and I sat in the wooden chair, my hands gripping the armrests. Judge Whitman looked at me kindly. Maya, I know this is hard. Just take your time and tell me the truth. Can you do that? Yes, Your Honor. Good. Now, in your own words, what happened the day your parents left? I took a breath and told him. Everything. The note on the fridge. The 6 days alone. The library. The moment Dennis found me. The way he'd given me a home, a room, a place to belong. Gerald Blackwood tried to trip me up during cross-examination, asking if I was sure I remembered correctly, if maybe I'd exaggerated how long I was alone. But I didn't budge. They left me. I said, my voice steady. They did abandon me, that's the truth. But surely, Blackwood said smoothly, you understand that your parents love you. They made mistakes, yes, but doesn't everyone deserve forgiveness? I thought about the orange juice glass, the journal, the parent-teacher conferences, the haircut, the way Dennis had said you belong here. Love should be shown through actions, I said quietly, not just words. Judge Whitman took less than 10 minutes to deliberate. When he returned, the courtroom was silent. He looked at my parents, then at Dennis, then at me. I have reviewed all the evidence and testimony in this case, he said. The petitioners, Mr. and Mrs. Lawson, claim that Mr. Grayson unlawfully took custody of their daughter. However, the evidence clearly shows that the child in question was abandoned for an extended period, during which time Mr. Grayson provided appropriate care and guardianship. He paused, his gaze hardening as he looked at my parents. Furthermore, the petitioner's testimony has been inconsistent and contradicted by phone records, social media posts, and witness statements. It is the finding of this court that Maya Lawson was in fact abandoned by her biological parents, and that Mr. Dennis Grayson has acted in the child's best interest. My heart pounded. Therefore, the petition is denied. Permanent legal guardianship of Maya Lawson is hereby granted to Dennis Grayson, effective immediately. The gavel came down. Outside the courthouse, my mother was waiting. You stole our daughter, she screamed as we walked past, her face twisted with rage. You turned her against us. This isn't over. Dennis stopped and turned to face her, his expression calm, but his voice like ice. No, Rosalie, he said quietly. You threw her away. I just picked her up. Then he took my hand and we walked to the car. I was legally safe now. The judge had ruled. The papers were signed. Dennis was my guardian, and no one could take that away. But as we drove away from the courthouse, I glanced back and saw my mother standing on the steps, Vanessa beside her, both of them watching us leave. The look on my mother's face wasn't defeat. It was fury. And I knew deep in my bones that this wouldn't be the last time they'd try to destroy what we'd built. The years after the trial were the happiest of my life. That might sound strange. How could anything be happy after courtrooms and accusations, and watching my own mother lie under oath? But here's what I learned when you've had to fight for a home. When you've stood in front of a judge and proven you deserve to be loved, ordinary troubles become luxuries. Pop quizzes felt manageable. Friendship drama felt small. Even the Seattle rain, which everyone complained about, felt like a blessing because I had a warm house to come home to and someone waiting there who actually cared if I was okay. For 5 years, I got to be a normal kid. Well, as normal as a kid could be when she'd been through what I'd been through, but Dennis made sure those years counted. At 14, I joined the debate club. I didn't think I'd be any good at it. I was still the quiet girl who sat in the back of the classroom, who jumped when teachers called on me, who ate lunch with a book as a shield. But Miss C. Turner Still, my teacher, still my champion, suggested I try it. "You have a strong voice, Maya," she said. "You just need to learn how to use it." So I went, and at first I was terrible, stumbling over arguments, forgetting my evidence, turning red whenever someone challenged me. But slowly, something shifted. I started to realize that debate wasn't so different from what I'd done in that courtroom. Tell the truth, back it up with evidence. Don't let anyone intimidate you into backing down. By the end of the year, I'd won my first trophy. Dennis put it on the mantle next to a photo of us at Pike Place Market, both of us grinning like idiots. That same year, I got my first job bagging groceries at the QFC on 15th Avenue. It wasn't glamorous, $8 an hour, sore feet, and the occasional rude customer. But when I brought home my first paycheck, Dennis sat me down at the kitchen table with a pen and paper. "Here's the rule," he said. "Save half, spend half, every single paycheck, no exceptions." But what if I need save half, spend half? He tapped the paper. "It's not about the amount, Maya. It's about the habit. You do this now, and by the time you're 30, you'll have options. You won't be trapped." I thought about my parents, about how they'd left for Florida chasing some business opportunity that never materialized, about how they'd demanded $100,000 from Dennis instead of just coming home. "Okay," I said, "save half, spend half." I never broke that rule. At 15, Dennis brought me to his office downtown. Grayson Solutions occupied the 20th floor of a glass tower near the waterfront. And walking into that sleek space full of computers and whiteboards and people in business casual felt like stepping into a different world. Dennis introduced me to his team engineers, project managers, analysts, and every single one of them shook my hand. Afterward, in the elevator going down, Dennis said, "You notice how everyone shook your hand?" "Yeah." "That's because a handshake matters. Firm grip, eye contact, genuine smile. It tells people you're someone worth taking seriously." He looked at me. "You're going to shake a lot of hands in your life, Maya. Make sure each one counts." I practiced in the mirror that night until my grip felt confident, until my smile didn't look forced. At 16, Dennis gave me a bracelet for my birthday. It was simple sterling silver, delicate but strong, with an engraving on the inside that I didn't notice until I took it off that night. "Don't chase approval, chase peace." "Where did you get this?" I asked the next morning at breakfast. Dennis looked up from his coffee. "I had it made. That's something I had to learn the hard way. Spent too many years trying to prove something to your father, to my parents, to people who were never going to be satisfied. Then I realized approval from the wrong people isn't worth having. But peace is everything." I wore that bracelet every day, still do. At 17, college applications consumed my life. I applied to 8 schools: University of Washington, Seattle, University Western Washington, and 5 others scattered across the state. Dennis helped me write essays, proofread my personal statement, and fill out scholarship applications until my eyes crossed. "You're going to college," he said one night when I was ready to give up on the FAFSA, "and you're not going to drown in debt doing it. So yes, we're filling out every single one of these forms." We did. 53 scholarship applications to be exact. I got 17. At 18, I graduated from Garfield High School with honors, a full ride to the University of Washington, and a silver pen from Dennis that had my initials engraved on the clip. "For all the stories you're going to write," he said, handing it to me in its velvet box. I didn't tell him I'd been keeping a journal since I was 11, the one he'd given me that first Christmas. I didn't tell him that I'd filled 6 of them by now, that writing had become the way I made sense of the world, the way I processed everything that had happened. But somehow, I think he knew. Graduation night. We sat on the porch of the house on Queen Anne, the house that had become our house, the place I'd learned what home really meant. The city lights glittered below us, and the air smelled like summer and possibility. Dennis didn't say much. He didn't need to. We just sat there in comfortable silence, watching the city, listening to the distant hum of traffic. After a while, I found the words I'd been holding for years. "Chew," I said quietly. "You're the only father I've ever had." His breath caught. When I looked over, his eyes were bright with tears. He was trying to blink away. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I reached over and squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. And in that silence, sitting on the porch with the city lights below and the summer night around us, there was a perfect understanding. No words needed, just the two of us and the family we'd built from nothing. The University of Washington smelled like opportunity and coffee. That's what I remember most about my first day on campus, standing in Red Square, with my backpack and my class schedule, watching students rush past in a blur of hoodies and headphones, and thinking I made it. The quad was massive. The buildings were intimidating, and somewhere in the crowd, a street musician was playing violin, while a dog wearing a Husky's bandana sat beside his case collecting tips. This was where I'd spend the next 4 years, where I'd learn to be a journalist, where I'd meet the people who'd stand beside me when the next battle came. I just didn't know it yet. Freshman year hit me like a freight train. It wasn't the coursework. I'd always been a good student. It was the doubt. Every time I sat in a lecture hall surrounded by students who'd gone to private schools, who had parents who were doctors and lawyers and professors, who talked about their gap years in Europe like it was no big deal, I felt like a fraud. Imposter syndrome, they called it. The feeling that you don't belong, that someone made a mistake letting you in, that any second now they'll figure out you're not actually smart enough to be here. Sunday mornings, Dennis would call. "How's school?" we'd ask. "Good," I'd lie. "Maya." His voice would go gentle but firm, the same tone he'd used when I was 12 and afraid to use the nice glassware. "Talk to me." So I would. I'd tell him about the readings I didn't understand, the students who seemed so much more confident, the professor who'd corrected my grammar in front of the whole class. And Dennis would listen, and then he'd say the thing I needed to hear: "You earned this. You got a full ride because you're smart and you work hard and you deserve to be there. Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you otherwise." By sophomore year, I started to believe him. I met Julia Martinez in Introduction to Journalism during fall quarter of my sophomore year. She sat 2 rows ahead of me, and I noticed her immediately, not just because she was the only person in class who wore red lipstick at 9 in the morning, but because she was the only one willing to challenge Professor Hendricks when he said something sexist about female reporters being too emotional for investigative journalism. With all due respect, Julia said, her hand shooting up, "Some of the best investigative journalism in the last decade has been done by women. Jodi Kantor-Megan, Tuhei, Ronan Farrow." Mr. Farrow is hardly... My point, Julia continued, not backing down, is that emotion isn't a weakness. It's what makes us care enough to dig deeper when everyone else gives up. I wanted to applaud. After class, I caught up with her outside. "That was incredible." She grinned. "Thanks, I'm Julia." "Maya, I know, you're the one who wrote that piece about the food bank volunteer program for the Daily. It was good." I blinked. "You read that?" "I read everything in the Daily. You should write more." She pulled out her phone. "Give me your number. We're getting coffee." That was Julia, direct, confident, unapologetic. She became my best friend, my first reader, the person who'd text me at 2 in the morning with story ideas or just to vent about an assignment. She saw the writer in me before I did, and she never let me play small. I met Nathan Cole in the community garden behind McMahon Hall during the spring of my sophomore year. I'd started volunteering there as a way to get out of my dorm room to do something with my hands that wasn't typing or reading. Nathan was a junior studying environmental science, and he had dirt under his fingernails and a smile that made you feel like the world might actually be okay. "You're new," he said, handing me a trowel. "Is it that obvious? You're holding the trowel upside down." I laughed, and that was it. We became friends first, working side by side in the garden, talking about classes and books and the terrible coffee in the hub. He didn't push. He didn't rush. He just showed up. By junior year, friends had quietly shifted into something more. Our first date was at a diner in Fremont. Nothing fancy, just burgers and milkshakes and conversation that stretched for 3 hours. He asked about my childhood, and I told him the short version: parents left, uncle took me in courtroom battle, happy ending. "That must have been terrifying," he said. It was, but I had Dennis. And now, I gestured around the diner at the life I'd built. Now I have this. Nathan reached across the table and took my hand. I'm glad you do. It was the healthiest relationship I'd ever seen, let alone been in. No drama, no games. Just two people who liked each other, respected each other, and chose to build something together. Dennis approved immediately. Julia grilled him for an hour the first time they met, and afterward, she texted me, "He's good. Keep him." Junior year, I landed an internship at the Seattle Times. It wasn't glamorous. I fact-checked articles, made coffee runs, and spent hours transcribing interviews. But I was there in the newsroom watching real journalists work. And when my editor, a woman named Caroline Morgan, handed me my first real assignment, a human interest piece about a Syrian refugee family settling in Seattle, I worked harder on that story than I'd worked on anything in my life. When it ran with my byline, I called Dennis from the newsroom, my voice shaking. "It's in print," I said. "My name, my story." "Send me a copy," he said, and I could hear the pride in his voice. "I'm framing it." He did. It hung in his office for the next 9 years. I graduated in June 2016 with a degree in journalism and a job offer from the Seattle Times. Dennis sat in the front row at the ceremony, and when they called my name, he was the loudest person in the stadium. I walked across that stage thinking about the girl I'd been at 11, scared, abandoned, convinced she wasn't worth keeping, and the woman I'd become. After the ceremony, we gathered for photos, me in my cap and gown, Dennis beaming beside me, Nathan with his arm around my shoulders, Julia making a ridiculous face, and Mrs. Garcia, who'd insisted on coming dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Someone, I think it was Nathan, took a photo of all of us together, the 5 of us smiling in the June sunshine, the Space Needle visible in the background. That photo sat on my desk at the Seattle Times for the next 9 years. It still does. Because those people, they were my family. Not the one I was born into, but the one I chose. The one that chose me back. And when the next battle came, when everything I'd built was threatened again, they'd be the ones standing beside me. At 24, I'd built a career from nothing. No connections, no family money, no favors called in. Just hard work late nights and a determination to prove that the girl who'd been abandoned at 11 could make something of herself. And I had. 2 years at the Seattle Times, a growing portfolio of bylines, and a reputation as someone who told stories that mattered, stories about people the world had forgotten. I thought I was safe. I thought the past was behind me. I didn't know that somewhere in Phoenix, my sister was watching every step I took. The article that changed everything ran in February 2017. I'd pitched it to Caroline, my editor, a month earlier, a feature about middle children, the ones who got lost in the shuffle between golden child firstborns and coddled babies. The ones whose parents forgot their birthdays, skipped their recitals, left them off family photos. The ones who learned early that love wasn't guaranteed. "It's personal for you," Caroline said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," I admitted, "but it's also a good story." "Then write it." I did. I interviewed psychologists, support group facilitators, and a dozen adults who'd grown up feeling invisible in their own families. I wove in research about birth order parental favoritism and the long-term effects of emotional neglect. And I wrote it with the kind of empathy that only comes from living it. The article ran on a Tuesday morning with the headline, "The Forgotten Ones, the Middle Child Crisis." By noon, it had 5,000 shares. By the end of the week, 50,000. My inbox exploded with messages from readers, people thanking me, people sharing their own stories, people saying, "Finally, someone understands." Caroline called me into her office and said the words every journalist dreams of hearing, "This is the kind of work we need more of. How would you feel about a columnist position?" I felt like I was flying. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't find out until much later, was that in Phoenix, Vanessa had just been fired from her job. She'd been working as an assistant manager at a boutique hotel, and according to what I eventually pieced together from Julia's relentless research, she'd been let go for attitude problems and unprofessional behavior. No severance, no references, just a box of her things and a cold goodbye. She moved back in with our parents. Spent her days scrolling through job boards, sending out resumes that went nowhere, and watching her old high school friends post photos of their promotions, their engagement rings, their picture-perfect lives. And then one day, in late spring, a mutual acquaintance, someone who'd gone to Garfield High with both of us, mentioned to our parents that I'd written a viral article, that I was doing well, that I'd become a somebody. Vanessa started Googling my name. She found every article I'd written, every mention of me in the Times, the photo from my UW graduation, my LinkedIn profile, and she started watching. The first message came in June. It was a LinkedIn connection request from someone named Sarah Mitchell. No photo, no job history, just a generic profile. I almost ignored it, but the message that came with it made me pause. Congrats on the columnist gig. Must be nice. It felt off, bitter. But I convinced myself I was being paranoid and declined the request. Then the Instagram comments started. They appeared under my posts, mostly photos of coffee cups and Seattle sunsets, the kind of boring personal stuff everyone posts from accounts with random usernames and no profile pictures. The comments were subtle at first. Some people have all the luck. Easy to succeed when someone else pays your way. Wonder what your real family thinks of all this. I blocked them. New accounts appeared. Julia noticed before I did. You're getting trolled, she said one afternoon, scrolling through my phone. These are all from the same person. Look at the syntax, the timing. Someone's obsessed with you. It's probably just some weirdo, I said, but my stomach churned. Maybe, Julia said. But be careful, Maya. In October, I saw her. I was walking down Pike Street after work, headphones in, lost in thought, when I felt that prickle on the back of your neck that tells you someone's watching. I turned, and there she was, standing outside a Starbucks 30 feet away. Vanessa. She'd cut her hair short and dyed it dark, and she looked thinner, harder than I remembered. But it was her. And she was staring right at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not quite anger, not quite sadness. Something cold and calculating. Our eyes met. I froze. She didn't wave, didn't smile, just looked at me for a long, terrible moment, then turned and walked away. I stood there on the sidewalk, my heart pounding, until someone bumped into me and muttered an apology. Then I pulled out my phone and called Dennis. She's here, I said. Vanessa's in Seattle. Are you sure? I just saw her, Dennis. What if... Come home, he said. We'll figure this out. But when I got home, I didn't tell Nathan. I didn't tell Julia. I convinced myself it was a coincidence that Vanessa had just been visiting, that I was overreacting, that everything was fine. I should have known better. 3 weeks later, on a gray Thursday afternoon in late October, I was at my desk at the Times when the receptionist called. Maya, there's someone here to see you. I frowned. I didn't have any appointments scheduled. Who is it? She didn't give her name, but she said she's your sister. The world tilted. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady, and walked to the elevator. Rode it down to the lobby in silence, my pulse hammering in my ears. The doors opened, and I stepped out into the bright, sterile space with its glass walls and modern furniture. And there she was. Vanessa stood by the reception desk wearing jeans and a black jacket. Her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. When she saw me, something flickered in her eyes, triumph maybe, or satisfaction. Hi, Maya, she said, her voice smooth and cold. We need to talk. Vanessa stood in the lobby of the Seattle Times, and my coworkers were watching. I could see them out of the corner of my eye, reporters pausing mid-conversation, interns pretending to check their phones. The receptionist's hand hovering over the phone like she was deciding whether to call security. Everyone could sense it, something was about to happen. Maya. Vanessa said, her voice too loud, too sharp. We need to talk about what you did to our family. Our family, like it had ever been mine. Vanessa, this isn't the place. You abandoned us. Her voice cracked, and I saw her strategy immediately play the victim, make a scene, force me to react. You turned your back on Mom and Dad, on me, and now you're here writing your little articles like you're some kind of hero. My face burned. Every eye in the lobby was on us. You need to leave, I said quietly. I need to leave. She laughed, bitter and sharp. You stole from us. Uncle Dennis stole you, brainwashed you, and now you act like we're the bad guys. Do these people know the truth about you? Maya, do they know you're a liar? The receptionist picked up the phone. "Ma'am," a security guard said, approaching cautiously, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "I'm her sister," Vanessa shrieked. "I have a right to—" "No, you don't." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You have no right to be here. You need to go." The guard took Vanessa's arm and she jerked away, still shouting as he escorted her toward the door. "This isn't over, Maya. You can't just erase your family. You can't just—" The door closed behind her, cutting off her voice. The lobby was silent. I stood there, my hands shaking, my face hot with humiliation, and felt every single person staring at me. Then I turned and walked to the elevator, pressing the button with trembling fingers. Behind me, someone whispered. I didn't catch the words, but I heard the tone gossip. The days that followed were a nightmare. Vanessa had always been good at social media, better than me, better than most people, and now she weaponized it. The fake accounts multiplied. New usernames, no profile pictures, all posting the same kinds of comments on every article I wrote. Maya Lawson is a fraud. She abandoned her family and now profits off their pain. The Seattle Times should be ashamed to employ someone like this. They didn't just comment on my articles. They tagged the Seattle Times official accounts. They tagged my editor. They tagged the paper's advertisers. Then Vanessa posted from her personal Facebook an account I'd blocked years ago, but screenshots spread like wildfire. My sister Maya walked away from our family when we needed her most. Now she writes articles about forgotten children while pretending she was the victim. Here's the truth. Below the text were photos I hadn't seen in years. Me at 10 smiling next to Vanessa at a birthday party. Me at 12 standing between my parents at some family event I didn't even remember. Photos carefully curated to tell a story that wasn't true. The post was shared 200 times in the first hour. Then the professional attack started. Someone, Vanessa, or someone she'd recruited, began leaving comments on every article I'd written, picking apart my research, questioning my sources, insinuating that I was biased, unreliable, dishonest. My work phone rang constantly. My personal Instagram filled with messages from strangers calling me ungrateful, calling me a liar, calling me worse. Julia helped me block accounts as fast as they appeared, but more kept coming. "She's trying to destroy your credibility," Julia said one night, scrolling through the comments on her phone. "If she can make people doubt you as a journalist, she wins." I know. So what are you going to do? I didn't have an answer yet. 2 weeks after the lobby incident, my editor-in-chief called me into her office. Caroline Morgan was a formidable woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and zero tolerance for nonsense. I'd always respected her, but as I sat across from her desk, I felt like I was 12 years old again, waiting to hear if I was in trouble. "Maya," she said, folding her hands, "we need to talk about what's been happening." My stomach dropped. "I'm sorry, I know it's been—" "Stop." She held up a hand. "I'm not here to reprimand you. I'm here to tell you that I've seen the social media attacks. I've read the comments. And I've also read the court records from your custody case." I blinked. "You looked me up?" "Of course I did. When someone starts a smear campaign against one of my reporters, I do my homework." She leaned back in her chair. "Your sister is lying, Maya. And I want you to know that this paper stands behind you." Relief hit me so hard I almost cried. But Caroline continued, "I also want to know how you want to handle this. We can ignore it and wait for it to die down. We can issue a statement. Or," she paused, "you can write about it." I looked up. "Write about it. You're a journalist. This is your story. And if you want to tell it on your terms with the facts, I'll publish it." For a moment I couldn't speak. Then I nodded. "I want to write it." "Good," Caroline said. "Then get to work." That night, I sat down at my laptop with a cup of coffee and Dennis's words echoing in my head. The truth is on our side. All you have to do is tell it. I opened a new document and typed the title, "When Family Becomes Strangers, a Journalist's Story." Then I started writing. I wrote about the note on the fridge, the 6 days alone, Dennis finding me, the courtroom battle, the years of peace. And now the attacks, the lies, the fake accounts, the invasion of my professional life. I wrote it with the same precision I used for every article, clear, factual, backed by evidence. No melodrama, no self-pity, just the truth. By midnight, I had a first draft. By 2 in the morning, I had a second. I was ready to publish. But before I could send it to Caroline, my phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Call me, it's urgent." My stomach sank, because I knew deep in my bones that Vanessa had made one more move. And this time, she'd gone after the person I loved. When narcissists don't get the reaction they want, they escalate. They find new targets, new pressure points, new ways to inflict pain. For me, the target was Nathan. I called him back immediately, my hands shaking as I pressed his name on my phone. "What happened?" I said the moment he picked up. "My mom just called." Nathan's voice was tight-controlled, but I could hear the anger underneath. "Someone contacted her and my dad, a woman claiming to be your sister. She told them..." He paused. "She told them I should be careful, that you're manipulative, that you've alienated your entire family, and I'm next." My stomach dropped. "Nathan, I'm so sorry." "Don't apologize. This isn't your fault." He took a breath. I explained everything to them. The abandonment, the custody battle, the court records. They believe me, Maya. They believe you. Relief hit me, but it was short-lived, because I knew this was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, the attacks on Nathan intensified. Vanessa or someone working for her started leaving comments on his LinkedIn profile. Professional sounding at first, then increasingly pointed. "Interesting career trajectory. Does your employer know about your girlfriend's family drama? Hope the relationship is worth the baggage." His coworkers started getting connection requests from fake profiles, followed by messages implying that Nathan was involved in some kind of scandal. One of them even forwarded him a screenshot. "Did you know Nathan Cole's girlfriend abandoned her family?" Nathan handled it with more grace than I would have. He responded to his coworkers with the truth, blocked the fake accounts, and refused to engage with the harassment. But I could see the toll it was taking, the tension in his jaw, the way he checked his phone constantly, the exhaustion in his eyes. Then came the Facebook posts. Vanessa created a new public post this time, with photos she must have pulled from my old Instagram pictures of Nathan and me, at a farmer's market, at a Huskies game, at Julia's birthday party. She captioned it, "My sister's boyfriend doesn't know what he's gotten into. Prayers for him." It was shared 40 times in an hour. "She's trying to destroy us." I said that night, sitting on Nathan's couch with my head in my hands. "She's going after you because she knows it'll hurt me." Nathan sat beside me, his arm around my shoulders. "She's not going to win, Maya. We're not going to let her." "But what if..." "No." His voice was firm. "We're going to fight this. Together." 3 days later, the legal threat arrived. It came via certified mail addressed to both Dennis and me, a letter from Gerald Blackwood Esquire on behalf of Vanessa Lawson. The letter was 2 pages of legalese, but the core demand was simple. Vanessa was claiming that over the years, she and our parents had given me gifts, birthday presents, Christmas presents, money that I'd obtained through manipulation and deceit. She was now demanding $75,000 in restitution plus legal fees. I stared at the letter in disbelief. This is insane. I haven't spoken to them in 10 years. They didn't give me anything. Dennis read the letter twice, his expression hardening. "This is harassment, pure and simple." He picked up his phone. "I'm calling Jonathan." Jonathan Pierce met with us the next morning at a cafe downtown. He read the letter, made a few notes, then set it aside with the kind of calm that comes from years of dealing with nonsense. "This won't hold up in court," he said. "There's no documentation, no proof of any gifts, and frankly, it's absurd on its face. But we're not going to wait for them to file a lawsuit. We're going to shut this down now." How I asked. Cease and desist, and a restraining order. Jonathan drafted a response that was a masterpiece of legal steel, 3 pages, detailing every false claim, every act of harassment, every boundary Vanessa had crossed. He cited the workplace incident, the fake social media accounts, the stalking, the attacks on Nathan. He ended with a demand that Vanessa and her attorney cease all contact immediately or face legal consequences. Then we filed for a restraining order. The evidence was overwhelming security footage from the Seattle Times lobby screenshots of the fake accounts records of the messages sent to Nathan's co-workers copies of the Facebook posts. Jonathan compiled it all into a thick folder and submitted it to the court. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. King County Courthouse, December 14, 2017. This time, I wasn't 12 years old. This time, I wasn't scared. Vanessa sat on the other side of the courtroom with Gerald Blackwood, her expression carefully neutral. But when our eyes met, I saw the flicker of something panic, maybe, or the realization that this wasn't going the way she'd planned. The judge, a different one this time, a woman in her 50s named Judge Patricia Lynn, reviewed the evidence in silence. Then she looked up at Vanessa. Ms. Lawson, the evidence presented here is extensive and troubling. The petitioner has documented a clear pattern of harassment, both in person and online, directed at herself and her partner. Do you dispute any of these claims? Vanessa glanced at Blackwood, who leaned over and whispered something. Then she said, "Your Honor, I was simply trying to reconnect with my sister. Our family has been..." Ms. Lawson. Judge Lynn's voice was sharp. Showing up at someone's workplace unannounced, creating fake social media accounts, and contacting their partner's family does not constitute reconnecting. It constitutes harassment. Vanessa's face flushed. Judge Lynn turned to me. "Ms. Maya Lawson, based on the evidence presented, I am granting a temporary restraining order. Ms. Vanessa Lawson is prohibited from contacting you appearing at your home or workplace, or contacting anyone on your behalf. This order will remain in effect pending a full hearing in 30 days. The gavel came down. I exhaled for the first time in 2 weeks. Outside the courthouse, Jonathan shook my hand. "We'll make this permanent at the next hearing. In the meantime, document everything. If she violates this order, call the police immediately." "Thank you," I said, "for everything." He smiled. "Go finish that article, Maya. It's time to tell your story." I went home and opened my laptop. The draft of When Family Becomes Strangers was still there, waiting. I'd written most of it before Nathan's urgent text, but now I had more to add: the attacks on him, the legal threats, the restraining order. I wrote it all with the precision of a journalist and the fury of someone who'd had enough. By midnight, it was done. I sent it to Caroline with a note, "Ready when you are." Her response came 10 minutes later. "This is incredible, Maya, powerful, honest, and airtight. We'll publish this week. Are you ready for what comes next?" I stared at the message for a long moment, my cursor blinking in the reply box. Then I typed, "I have to be," and I hit send. The article published on a Thursday morning in mid-December. By noon, it had 50,000 reads. By evening, it was wildfire. When Family Becomes Strangers, a journalist's story, ran on. The Seattle Times website with a simple header photo, me at my desk, looking directly at the camera. No smile, just the quiet determination of someone who decided to stop hiding. The article was long, nearly 4,000 words, but people read every sentence. They read about the note on the fridge, the 6 days alone, Dennis finding me, the courtroom battle at 12, the years of peace, and then the return Vanessa's harassment, the workplace ambush, the attacks on Nathan, the legal threats. I wrote it the way I'd write any investigative piece, with facts, with evidence, with clarity. But I also wrote it with something I'd never put into my journalism before: my own voice. Raw, honest, unflinching. The response was immediate and overwhelming. By the end of the first day, the article had been shared 20,000 times. My inbox filled with messages, hundreds of them, then thousands. Readers sending me their own stories. This is my story. I've never seen it written down before. Thank you for making me feel seen. I thought I was the only one. My parents did the same thing. I always thought it was my fault. You gave me permission to stop apologizing for protecting myself. Some were from middle children who'd grown up invisible. Some were from people who'd been abandoned by their families and told they were the problem. Some were from adults still trying to heal from childhood spent feeling unwanted. Every single one of them said the same thing in different words. Thank you for telling the truth. Julia called me that night, her voice thick with emotion. Maya, do you know what you just did? You didn't just tell your story. You told their stories. All of them. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my laptop screen, watching the share count climb. Nathan sat beside me, his hand on my shoulder. You did it, he said quietly. You fought back with the truth and you won. Behind the scenes, the fallout was swift and brutal for them. Vanessa couldn't respond. The restraining order prohibited her from contacting me or anyone associated with me, and her lawyer had made it clear that any public retaliation would be used against her in court. She stayed silent, but according to Julia's digging, her Facebook and Instagram accounts went private within hours of the article going live. My parents, Stephen and Rosalie, tried to issue a statement on their own Facebook pages, something vague about misunderstandings and one-sided stories, but it backfired spectacularly. People in their Phoenix community recognized the details. Friends and neighbors commented, asking pointed questions. Within 2 days, both posts were deleted. Gerald Blackwood, the lawyer who'd been so eager to threaten me with lawsuits, quietly withdrew from representing them. No explanation, no statement, he just disappeared from the case. The $75,000 demand evaporated with him. 2 weeks later, at the follow-up hearing for the restraining order, the judge reviewed the evidence, including the article, The Public Response, and the documented harassment, and made the order permanent. 3 years. Vanessa was prohibited from coming within 500 feet of me, Nathan Dennis, or my workplace. Jonathan Pierce shook my hand outside the courthouse. "That's it, Maya. You're legally protected now. They can't touch you." I wanted to believe him. The article didn't just end the attacks, it launched my career. In January, Caroline called me into her office and offered me a promotion, senior staff writer with my own column and editorial freedom to pursue the stories I wanted to tell. "You've earned this," she said. "Not just because of the viral piece, but because you're a damn good journalist. I want you to keep doing what you do, telling the stories no one else is telling." I accepted. A week later, I got an email from NPR asking if I'd be willing to do an interview about the article and the broader issue of family estrangement. I said yes, and on a cold January morning, I sat in a radio studio and talked to a host named Lulu Garcia Navarro about what it means to walk away from toxic family and why society makes it so hard. The interview aired on Weekend Edition, and afterward, the speaking invitations started coming in universities, conferences, support groups for estranged adults. People wanted to hear my story. They wanted to know how I'd survived, how I'd healed, how I'd built a life. I said yes to as many as I could. The moment that mattered most, though, didn't happen on NPR or at a conference. It happened 3 months later on a rainy March afternoon in a coffee shop near the Times office. I was working on my laptop, headphones in, when someone tapped my shoulder. I looked up to see a woman in her 30s holding a to-go cup and looking nervous. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said. "But you're Maya Lawson, right? You wrote, 'When Family Becomes Strangers.'" "Yes," I said, pulling out my earbuds. She smiled, her eyes bright with tears. "I just wanted to say thank you. I read your article in December, and it gave me permission to stop trying with my parents. I've spent my whole life thinking I was the problem, that if I just tried harder, they'd love me. But your article helped me see that sometimes walking away is the kindest thing you can do for yourself." I stood up and without thinking hugged her. She hugged me back, both of us crying in the middle of a crowded Starbucks while baristas called out drink orders around us. "You're not the problem," I told her. "You never were." "Neither were you," she said. When she left, I sat back down and stared at my laptop screen, unable to focus on work. Because that was why I'd written the article. Not for revenge, not for vindication, but for the people who needed to hear that they weren't alone, that they weren't broken, that choosing peace over approval was okay. I thought that was the end. For 6 years it was. 6 years of peace. 6 years of building my career, writing my columns, speaking at events. 6 years of Sunday dinners with Dennis, date nights with Nathan, coffee shop, hangs with Julia. 6 years of normalcy, the kind I'd fought so hard for, the kind I'd never taken for granted. Dennis turned 60, then 65. He talked about retiring, about selling Grayson Solutions, about maybe traveling more. We laughed about him becoming one of those retirees who took up woodworking or learned to sail. Nathan and I moved in together into a small apartment in Fremont with a view of the Ship Canal. We adopted a cat. We talked vaguely about the future marriage, maybe someday when we were ready. Life was good. Life was stable. Life was mine. I thought the battles were over. I thought I'd won. But in early 2023, Dennis got sick, and the moment my old family heard they smelled blood again. 6 years after that article felt like a gift. Dennis turned 60, then 65. I turned 25, then 29. We celebrated birthdays and holidays marked milestones built routines. Sunday dinners became sacred, just the two of us, or sometimes Nathan and Julia too, gathered around the kitchen table in the house on Queen Anne, arguing about politics or laughing at Dennis's terrible dad jokes. We thought we had forever, or at least we thought we had more time than we did. In 2018, I won the Pacific Northwest Journalists Association Award for feature writing. The viral article about family estrangement had opened doors I hadn't known existed, and suddenly I was being invited to speak at conferences, to contribute to anthologies, to consult on stories about trauma and recovery. By the end of the year, the Stranger Seattle's Alternative Weekly offered me a position as a staff columnist. The pay was better, the creative freedom was total, and I'd get to write the kinds of deep-dive personal essays that had always been my strength. I took it. Dennis threw me a celebration dinner at a restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay. He raised his glass and said, "To Maya, who proved that the best revenge is living well." Nathan squeezed my hand under the table. Julia wiped her eyes and pretended she wasn't crying. I felt invincible. In 2019, Nathan and I moved in together. The apartment in Fremont wasn't much a one-bedroom with a galley kitchen and a view of the Ship Canal, but it was ours. We painted the walls a soft gray, hung photos from our travels, and adopted a tabby cat we named Atticus because we were both literary nerds. Life was stable. Life was good. Life was everything I'd fought for. Dennis came over for dinner once a week, always bringing wine and always pretending he didn't sneak treats to the cat when we weren't looking. He seemed happy, healthy, strong. I didn't see the cracks yet. Then came 2020 and the world shut down. The pandemic hit Seattle hard and fast. Offices closed, restaurants shuttered, the streets emptied. Nathan and I hunkered down in our apartment, working from home, ordering groceries online, watching the news with growing dread. Dennis lived alone. He'd always been independent, always insisted he didn't need help, but I wasn't going to let him isolate through a pandemic at 63. So we formed a pod, me, Nathan, Dennis, and every Sunday we still gathered for dinner, masked when necessary, distanced when required, but together. Those dinners became a lifeline, not just for him, but for me. You know what I'm grateful for. Dennis said one night in July when Seattle's brief summer had finally arrived and we were eating on his back patio. This, you, the fact that we get to do this. "It's just dinner, Dennis," I said, smiling. "No, Maya, it's not." He looked at me, his expression serious. "It's family." In December 2021, Nathan proposed. We were walking through the Washington Park Arboretum, the trees bare and the ground covered in frost, when he stopped on a bridge overlooking a pond and got down on one knee. "Maya Lawson," he said, his breath fogging in the cold air. "You're the strongest, kindest, most incredible person I've ever met. Will you marry me?" I said yes before he even finished the question. We got married in the spring of 2022, a small ceremony at a garden venue in Ballard, with 30 people and a violinist, and vows we wrote ourselves. Julia was my maid of honor. Dennis walked me down the aisle. I'll never forget that moment, Dennis, in his best suit, offering me his arm, his eyes bright with pride, and something that looked suspiciously like tears. "Ready?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "I'm ready." As we walked, I thought about the girl I'd been at, 11, abandoned alone, convinced she wasn't worth keeping. And I thought about the woman I'd become walking toward a man who loved me, surrounded by people who'd chosen to be there, with a father who'd stayed. At the end of the aisle, Dennis hugged me tight. "I'm so proud of you, kid," he whispered. "I love you," I whispered back. He let go, and I took Nathan's hand, and we said our vows under a sky so blue it hurt. Later that summer, Dennis started talking about retirement. "I'm thinking next year," he said over Sunday dinner in August. 66 feels like a good time to step back, maybe travel, maybe finally learn how to fish. "You hate fishing," I pointed out. "Then maybe I'll learn to like it." He grinned. "Point is, I've worked long enough. Time to enjoy life." What I didn't know, what he didn't tell me, was that he'd also updated his will that month, made sure everything was airtight, made sure I'd be protected. He was preparing even then. In early 2023, I started to notice the changes. Dennis moved slower, got tired more easily. Skipped our Sunday dinners twice in January, something he'd never done before. When I asked if he was okay, he waved it off. Just getting old, Maya, it happens. But he was losing weight. His face looked thinner, his clothes looser. And one Sunday in March, when he stood up from the dinner table, he winced and pressed a hand to his side. "Dennis?" "I'm fine, just a little indigestion. You should see a doctor." "I will. Stop worrying." But he didn't. Not until I showed up at his house unannounced in April and told him I wasn't leaving until he made an appointment. He went the next week. The diagnosis came in May. I sat beside Dennis in Dr. Collins's office, the same Dr. Collins who'd given me checkups when I was 12, who documented that I was slightly underweight but otherwise healthy during the custody evaluation. He was older now, grayer, but his expression was the same kind but unflinching. "Dennis," Dr. Collins said gently, "the scans show a mass on your pancreas. The biopsy confirms it's cancer. Stage 3, possibly stage 4. It's advanced." The word cancer felt like a punch to the chest. "What's the prognosis?" Dennis asked, his voice steady. Dr. Collins hesitated. "With aggressive treatment, chemotherapy, possibly surgery, we might be able to extend your time. 18 to 24 months. Maybe." The word hung in the air like a guillotine. "And without treatment?" Dennis asked. 6 months, maybe less." I couldn't breathe. The room was too small, the air too thin. I heard myself say something. There has to be something else, another option. But Dr. Collins was shaking his head. "I'm sorry, Maya. I wish I had better news." We sat in the parking lot afterward, Dennis in the passenger seat of my car, me gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. "Dennis," I said, my voice breaking, "we're going to fight this. We'll do the treatment. Maya," he put his hand over mine, "I'm 66 years old. I've had a good life, a great life." "You're not dying," I said fiercely. "You're not." He smiled, sad and gentle. "Everyone does, kid. It's just a matter of when." "Stop." Tears blurred my vision. "Stop talking like that. Listen to me." His voice was firm now, the same tone he'd used when I was 12 and needed to hear the truth. "I got to watch you build a meaningful life. I got to see you graduate, get married, become the person you were always meant to be. That's more than most people get, Maya. That's everything." I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream. But all I could do was lean my head against his shoulder and cry while the Seattle rain drummed softly against the windshield. Watching someone you love die slowly is a particular kind of hell. It's not the big moments, the diagnosis, the hospital visits, the conversations about hospice. It's the small ones, the way their clothes start to hang loose, the way they wince when they stand, the way their laughter gets quieter until it stops altogether. And through it all, every time my phone rang from an unknown number, I knew the vultures were circling. Dennis started chemotherapy in late June. I moved back into the house on Queen Anne to take care of him, not because he asked, but because I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. Nathan came over every evening after work, bringing dinner and helping with whatever needed doing. Julia stopped by on weekends with groceries and terrible reality TV to distract us. The chemo made Dennis tired and nauseous. He lost more weight. His hair, already gray, started to thin, then fall out in patches. But he never complained, not once. "How are you feeling?" I'd ask every morning. "Like $1,000,000. He'd lie, and we'd both pretend to believe it. The first contact came in mid-July. I was loading the dishwasher when my phone buzzed with a voicemail from an unknown Phoenix number. Against my better judgment, I listened. "Maya, honey, it's Mom." Rosalie's voice was soft, tentative, dripping with false concern. "I heard Dennis is sick. I'm so sorry. If there's anything we can do, please let us know. We're praying for both of you." I deleted it immediately and blocked the number. 3 days later, a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Maya, it's Vanessa. Can we talk? I know things have been hard between us, but I want to make amends. Life is short, please." I showed it to Dennis. He read it, then handed my phone back. "Don't respond," he said quietly. "But, Maya, silence is heavier than words. They want a reaction. Don't give them one." I blocked that number too. In August, Dennis was hospitalized with complications from the chemo dehydration, an infection his body struggling to fight back. We spent 5 days in a sterile room at Swedish Medical Center, and it was there late one night when the nurses had dimmed the lights and the machines beeped softly in the background that Dennis brought up the will. "I've updated everything," he said, his voice hoarse. "Jonathan has copies. You're the executor and you inherit everything. The house, the business precedes all of it. It's airtight, Maya. They can't touch it." "I don't want to talk about this," I said, my throat tight. "But you have to." He reached for my hand. "Because they're going to try. When I'm gone, they're going to come after you, and I need you to promise me you'll fight." I looked at him, pale, thin, but still him, still the man who'd found me walking home from the library at 11 years old and decided I was worth saving. "I promise," I whispered. A week after Dennis came home from the hospital, an email arrived in my inbox from Stephen Lawson. Subject A request. Maya. "We understand that Dennis is very ill. We would like to visit and say goodbye. Whatever differences we've had, he was family once, and we believe he deserves to be surrounded by love in his final days. Please let us know when would be convenient." Stephen, I read it 3 times, fury building with each word. He was family once, as if they had any right to claim him, as if they'd ever cared about him or me at all. I wrote back, "Dennis doesn't want to see you. Do not contact us again." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. September brought a brief, cruel reprieve. The chemo seemed to work for a few weeks. Dennis had more energy, ate a little more, even joked about going back to work. For a moment, I let myself hope. Then the legal threat arrived. Gerald Blackwood, the same lawyer who'd represented my parents in the custody battle 17 years ago, who'd demanded $75,000 after the workplace attack, who apparently had no shame, sent a letter to both Dennis and me. In it, he claimed that my parents were concerned about Dennis's medical care and the decisions being made on his behalf. He suggested that I might be unduly influencing a vulnerable, terminally ill man. He threatened to petition the court to appoint a neutral medical guardian. I called Jonathan Pierce immediately. "They're trying to challenge his competency," Jonathan said, reading the letter over the phone. "They want to claim he's not capable of making his own decisions so they can step in. That's insane. Dennis is completely lucid." "I know, which is why we're going to shut this down fast." Jonathan paused. "We'll get a medical evaluation from Dr. Collins. He'll confirm that Dennis has full mental capacity. Blackwood won't have a leg to stand on." The evaluation happened 2 days later. Dr. Collins asked Dennis questions: his name, the date, who was president, what medications he was taking. Dennis answered everything clearly, calmly, even managing a dry joke about how he wished he didn't remember the current political situation. Dr. Collins signed a document certifying that Dennis Grayson was of sound mind and fully capable of making his own medical and legal decisions. Jonathan sent it to Blackwood with a note that basically said, "Try again and we'll file harassment charges." We didn't hear from him after that. By October, the brief improvement was over. Dennis's energy faded again. He slept more, ate less, struggled to walk from the bedroom to the living room without needing to rest. "Doctor, Collins gently suggested we start thinking about hospice care, not giving up, but acknowledging that the goal was now comfort, not cure." I hated that word, hospice. It felt like surrender. But Dennis was calm about it. "I'm tired, Maya," he said one afternoon in November, sitting in his favorite chair by the window, a blanket over his lap. "I fought as hard as I can, but I'm ready." "I'm not," I said, my voice breaking. He smiled, sad and gentle. "I know, kid, but you will be." The final contact came in mid-December. I was sitting at Dennis's bedside reading aloud from one of his favorite books, To Kill a Mockingbird, the same one he'd given me years ago when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Phoenix area code. I let it go to voicemail. Then, against my better judgment, I listened. Stephen's voice clipped and businesslike. "Maya, this is your father. We've decided to come to Seattle. We'll be there in 2 days. We're already booked on a flight. We'll be staying at the Marriott downtown. We expect to see Dennis. And you." Not a request, an announcement. I played it for Dennis. His expression hardened. "Don't let them in," he said, his voice weak but firm. "Promise me, Maya, don't let them near me." "I won't," I said. "I promise." Christmas Eve arrived cold and gray, the kind of Seattle winter day that makes you want to stay inside with tea and blankets. Dennis was asleep in his hospital bed. We'd set it up in the living room so he could see the Christmas tree I'd decorated, the lights twinkling softly in the dim room. His breathing was shallow but steady, peaceful. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I glanced at the screen. Text from Rosalie Lawson. "We'll be there tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock. See you soon." I stared at the message, rage burning hot and bright in my chest. They were coming. After 17 years of silence, after abandoning me, after attacking me, after trying to destroy everything Dennis and I had built, they were coming to circle his deathbed like the vultures they were. I looked at Dennis, asleep and vulnerable, the man who'd given me everything. And I made a decision. They wouldn't be allowed near him. Not tomorrow. Not ever. I'd promised to fight. And I was done being polite. Christmas morning, the knock came at exactly 10. Through the peephole, I saw them, Stephen, Rosalie, and Vanessa, standing on the porch with rolling suitcases. Vanessa already had her phone raised, recording. They weren't visiting. They were documenting, planning to stay. I opened the door just enough for them to see me. Nathan stood behind me like a wall. "No," I said. My mother's face collapsed into practiced sorrow. "Maya, please. We just want to see him. To say goodbye. Dennis doesn't want to see you. Leave." "We have a right," my father began. "You have no rights here," Nathan said calmly. "You're violating a restraining order by being on this property. Leave now or we call the police." Vanessa lifted her phone higher. "You're isolating a dying man." I slammed the door and locked it. They stayed. For 2 hours, they sat on the porch. I watched through the window, my mother crying for the camera, my father pacing on his phone, Vanessa filming the house and narrating a story about being cruelly blocked from saying goodbye. I called 911. The police arrived within 20 minutes. Officer Martinez stepped out, same officer who'd taken my statement 17 years ago. She recognized me instantly. "Maya," she said softly, "what's happening?" I showed her everything, the restraining order messages, emails, court papers. She walked to the porch and spoke to them. My father argued. Vanessa kept filming. Officer Martinez handed them copies of the order and said something sharp. My father's face went red. They finally left, suitcases rattling down the driveway. Vanessa filmed until the last second. My mother cried, real or fake, I couldn't tell anymore. "They won't bother you again tonight," Officer Martinez said. "Document everything. Call if they return." She squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry about Dennis." The week after Christmas, Dennis barely woke. Hospice came daily, speaking in gentle voices, adjusting medication, telling me it would be soon. Days, maybe. I sat beside him, holding his hand, reading books he loved, playing music he used to hum. Nathan brought food I couldn't eat. Julia sat with me in silence. Mrs. Garcia brought soup and quiet comfort. On January 10th, Dennis opened his eyes. It was late afternoon, winter light pale through the window. I'd been dozing when I felt his fingers twitch. "Maya," he whispered, "I'm here." His eyes focused clear for the first time in days. "Don't let them erase you." "What?" "Your presence. Your story." He swallowed. "They'll try. When I'm gone." "I won't," I promised, crying. "I won't." He squeezed my hand weakly, then his eyes closed. Those were the last words he ever said. Dennis Grayson died at 3:47 a.m. on January 15th, 2025. I was holding his hand. Nathan was beside me. One moment, Dennis was breathing slow, shallow. The next, he stopped. The world stopped with him. I don't know how long I sat there waiting for him to breathe again. Nathan held me. The nurse spoke softly, but I didn't hear. My father was gone. The man who found me, saved me, raised me gone. I was 30 years old and felt like an 11-year-old girl alone in an empty house. By sunrise, my old family knew. 14 missed calls, voicemails, texts, an email demanding involvement. I blocked them all and called Jonathan Pierce. Dennis left specific instructions, Jonathan said later. "The funeral is private. Invitation only. Your biological family is excluded. They'll come anyway. Then we'll have security." Dennis prepared for this. The funeral was held January 20th at a small chapel burial afterward. 50 people came. Friends, neighbors, colleagues. Julia gave a eulogy that broke everyone. Nathan read from To Kill a Mockingbird. Mrs. Garcia brought white roses. I sat in the front row, breathing. Halfway through, the doors burst open. My parents and Vanessa stormed in. My mother wailed. Vanessa screamed, pointing at me, accusing, blaming. Security grabbed them. Vanessa fought, shrieking. My father shouted about lawyers. My mother sobbed theatrically. They were dragged out, the doors slammed. I stared ahead, refusing to cry. "You're okay," Julia whispered. "They're gone." At the graveside, after everyone left, I stood alone. I placed a single white rose on the casket. "Goodbye, Dad," I whispered. Not uncle, not guardian, Dad. Nathan, Julia, and Mrs. Garcia stood nearby, not intruding, just witnessing. That night, alone in the house that was now mine, I opened Dennis's safe. Inside were deeds documents and a sealed envelope with my name. I opened it. "Maya," the letter began, "if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you're about to face them one last time. If you're still watching, comment now. Let me know you're here." My question for you: if you walked into that conference room, would you stay silent or speak your truth? Tell me what you'd do. Quick disclaimer: the following includes some fictional elements added for narrative effect. If you prefer to stop here, that's completely fine. But if you want to witness the moment they finally faced consequences, keep watching. Philip Warren's conference room was all glass and polished wood, with a view of Elliott Bay that would have been beautiful if I'd been able to focus on anything except the three people sitting across the table from me: Stephen, Rosalie, and Vanessa Lawson. They thought they were about to claim a fortune. They were about to learn otherwise. Philip Warren, Dennis's estate lawyer, a dignified man in his 60s, sat at the head of the table with a leather folder. Jonathan Pierce sat beside me, calm and alert. Nathan held my hand under the table. Across from us, Gerald Blackwood sat beside my parents, looking confident. Vanessa kept glancing at me with something between hatred and triumph. Philip cleared his throat. "We're gathered today for the reading of Dennis Michael Grayson's last will and testament, executed August 15th, 2024. Mr. Grayson's estate is valued at approximately $7 million. He opened the folder and read through the specific gifts. To Helen Garcia, neighbor and friend, $50,000. I smiled, thinking of Mrs. Garcia. To the hospice nurses of Swedish Medical Center, $10,000 each. To the Seattle Foster Youth Scholarship Fund, $100,000. My throat tightened. Even in death, Dennis was taking care of people who'd been forgotten. Then Philip's tone shifted. "The remaining assets are distributed as follows. Mr. Grayson's shares in Grayson Solutions, valued at $4.5 million, are to be divided equally among employees who have been with the company 5 years or more. The house at 1247 Belmont Avenue East, valued at $2.3 million, is bequeathed to Maya Lawson." My mother's face twitched. "All investment accounts and remaining assets totaling $1.9 million are bequeathed to Maya Lawson." Vanessa's hands clenched into fists. Philip paused, then looked directly at my parents. "To Stephen Lawson, Rosalie Lawson, and Vanessa Lawson, I leave nothing." Silence, complete ringing silence. My father's face went red. Vanessa stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. "That's ridiculous." "Please sit down, Ms. Lawson," Philip said calmly. "I'm not finished." Philip adjusted his glasses and read Dennis's statement. "I, Dennis Michael Grayson, being of sound mind, wish to make clear my reasons. In November 2005, Stephen and Rosalie abandoned their 11-year-old daughter, Maya, for 6 days with no food or contact. When I took her in, they did not object or call. They simply left. In 2006, they filed a lawsuit accusing me of kidnapping and demanding $100,000. They lost. The court granted me full guardianship. In 2017, Vanessa launched a harassment campaign against Maya, including workplace attacks and threatening messages. A restraining order was granted. In 2023, during my terminal illness, all 3 violated restraining orders, harassed hospice staff, and crashed my funeral. Maya Lawson is my daughter in every way that matters. Stephen, Rosalie, and Vanessa abandoned her and have spent 20 years trying to harm her. They deserve nothing, and they will receive nothing. The room was silent except for my mother's quiet breathing. Then Philip opened a laptop. Mr. Grayson recorded a video statement in December 2024 to confirm his mental competency. He pressed play. Dennis appeared on screen thin-tired but clear-eyed, December 10, 2024. My name is Dennis Michael Grayson. I am 66 years old and of sound mind. This will reflect my true wishes made freely without coercion. He looked into the camera. Maya Lawson is my daughter, not by blood, but by choice. I raised her from age 11, and she has been the greatest joy of my life. Everything I leave her, she has earned through love, loyalty, and 2 decades of being the family I chose. His expression hardened. To Stephen, Rosalie, and Vanessa, you abandoned a child. You forfeited any claim the moment you walked away. You don't get to come back now and demand what you never valued. The video ended. My father exploded. This is elder abuse. He was sick. Mr. Grayson was evaluated by a psychiatrist 2 weeks before that recording. Philip said, sliding a document across. Dr. Collins confirmed full mental capacity. There is no basis for challenge. We'll contest anyway, Vanessa shouted. Jonathan Pierce leaned forward, his voice cold. You have no rights, and if you contest, you'll lose. Per the will's terms, any unsuccessful challenge results in you paying all our legal fees, which will be considerable. Blackwood, silent until now, closed his briefcase and stood. This case is unwinnable. I'm withdrawing as counsel. You can't, my father started. I can, and I am. Blackwood walked out. I stood. 3 pairs of eyes turned to me, furious, desperate, defeated. You want to know why you got nothing? I said quietly. Because you deserved nothing. Dennis saw through you. This was never about love or family. It was about money. And now you know your greed cost you everything. I picked up my bag. We're done here. Don't contact me again. You're not part of my life, and you never will be. I walked out, Nathan and Jonathan beside me. Behind me, I heard my mother sob and Vanessa's voice shrill. This isn't over. But it was. Outside, the January sun was bright and cold. I stood on the sidewalk and took a breath. It's over, I said, my voice cracking. It's really over. Nathan pulled me into his arms. Julia appeared. She'd been waiting downstairs and wrapped her arms around us both. You did it, Julia whispered. He'd be so proud. But the victory felt hollow, because Dennis wasn't here to see it. He wasn't here to celebrate, to laugh, to tell me I'd handled it well. He's still gone, I whispered into Nathan's shoulder. And finally, I let myself cry. Dennis's handwriting was precise, measured the same careful script I'd seen on birthday cards and grocery lists. The letter was dated December 20th, 2024, 5 days before my parents showed up with cameras and luggage. He knew. I sat at his desk and read. Page 1. Maya, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't feel guilty about the money. You earned every cent by being there. By showing up to Sunday dinners, holding my hand during chemo, making this house a home, you were the daughter I chose, and I'm honored you chose me back. My vision blurred. I turned to page 2. Page 2, practical matters. The house is yours? Keep it, sell it, whatever feels right. But check on Mrs. Garcia. She's getting older and doesn't have much family. She loves you. Jonathan has all my legal documents. Trust him. Your inheritance will be around $6 million after taxes. Save half, spend half. And Maya, use it for good. Help people who were forgotten like you were. I read that twice. Help people who were forgotten. Then the final page, page 3. Write this story. Not for revenge, but because other forgotten children need to know they're not alone. They need to know being abandoned doesn't mean you're unlovable. That building a new family is possible. You're a writer, Maya, a damn good one. So tell the truth. Publish it. Let your voice reach the people who need to hear it. I'm so proud of you. Be brave, kid. Remember, you don't need their approval. You never did. All my love, Dad. The signature stopped me cold. Dad, not Uncle Dennis, not Dennis. Dad. The first time he'd ever written it. I pressed the letter to my chest and cried. February and March were legal proceedings. My biological family contested the will, claiming undue influence. Jonathan responded with a 40-page brief citing psychiatric evaluation video testimony and documented harassment. The judge dismissed their claim in 10 minutes, then ordered them to pay $15,000 in legal fees. Jonathan called to tell me. I laughed for the first time since Dennis died. He'd love that. He absolutely would, Jonathan agreed. The estate settled in late March, after taxes $6.2 million. I donated $500,000 to the Seattle Foster Youth Scholarship Fund. The rest went into investments. I kept the house. I moved back in April, bringing my things from the apartment Nathan and I had shared. Nathan helped me pack, reassuring me this wasn't the end of us, just a transition. I kept Dennis's things, the bookshelves, the coffee mugs, the chair by the window, not as a shrine, but as home, our home. Mrs. Garcia came over with soup. "He loved you so much," she said. "You made his last years the happiest of his life." I started therapy, twice a week, then once. I talked about grief guilt, the hollow feeling of winning but losing. Healing wasn't linear. Some days I felt okay, some days I couldn't get out of bed. Every Sunday I visited Dennis's grave, bringing white roses and talking to him like he could hear me. Maybe he could. Maybe love stays even after the person is gone. In mid-April, I opened my laptop and started writing. It began with the note on the fridge. "We'll be back soon." 6 weeks later, I had 15,000 words. Every memory, every moment, every lesson Dennis taught me. The abandonment, the courtroom, the attacks, the will reading, the orange juice glass and the journal and the wedding where he walked me down the aisle. What it means to be seen, to be chosen, to build a family from nothing. Caroline Morgan. My editor read the draft and called immediately. "Maya, this is extraordinary, but are you sure it's going to open old wounds?" "I'm sure," I said. "It's what he asked me to do." 2 weeks of editing, fact-checking, tightening. I changed some names, condensed timelines, but kept the truth intact. Final title, The Man Who Saved Me a 20-Year Story. Scheduled to publish Friday morning at 6 a.m. Thursday night, I walked through the house alone. I stood in the kitchen where Dennis had poured me orange juice in real glassware and told me things exist to be used, not feared. I sat at the table where we'd done homework and celebrated birthdays. I climbed to my old room, still painted soft gray, still holding the desk where I'd written my first articles. Then I went to Dennis's chair by the window and sat down. The leather was worn smooth from years of use. I could almost feel his presence the way he'd sit here with coffee and the newspaper humming off-key content. I pulled out the journal he'd given me that first Christmas. The leather was cracked now, the pages soft from being turned thousands of times. I flipped to the first entry written in my 12-year-old handwriting. December 25, 2005. I am in this house. Then I turned to the last blank page and wrote, May 8, 2025. I kept my promise, Dad. I told the story. I closed the journal and set it on the side table. Outside, the city lights glittered. Somewhere out there, people were living their lives, some forgotten, some searching, some wondering if they'd ever belong. Tomorrow they'd read my story. And maybe, just maybe, they'd know they weren't alone. I glanced at the clock, 11:47 p.m., then midnight. It was Friday. The article would go live at 6 a.m. I sat in Dennis's chair, my father's chair, and waited for the sun to rise. I wrote what I knew. Within 24 hours, 500,000 people read it. Within a week, 2 million. This time I held the pen. The article went live at 6 a.m. on Friday, May 9th, 2025. The Man Who Saved Me a 20-Year Story appeared on the Seattle Times website with a photo of me at Dennis's grave, placing a white rose on his headstone. By noon, it was trending nationally. Comments flooded in, people sharing their own stories. This is my story. I was abandoned too. Thank you. My uncle raised me. He died last year. I wish I'd told him he was my real father. I'm 11 years old and my parents just left. This gave me hope. That last one made me cry for an hour. Over the next week, I received 5,000 emails. People sent photos of their chosen families, friends who became siblings, neighbors who became parents. They told me about courtroom battles and funerals crashed by people who'd never cared. They said I'd given them permission to stop apologizing for protecting themselves. NPR called. I said yes, full circle from years ago. This time I talked about Dennis, about what it means to be chosen. Your story resonates because it's universal, the host said, and everyone deserves to be seen, I replied. I declined most other requests. I'd told my story. I didn't need to perform grief for clicks. But I accepted the book deal offers. 3 publishers reached out. I was considering it expanding into a full memoir. He'd want you to, Nathan said. I know, I said. I'm just not ready yet. Then wait, it'll still be there. I didn't hear from my biological family directly, but through Julia's research, I learned what happened. Vanessa deleted all social media within 48 hours. Stephen and Rosalie went private. Phoenix neighbors recognized them, and the comments were brutal. You abandoned your daughter. Shame on you. Stephen lost clients. Rosalie stopped going to church. Vanessa moved to Tucson. They never contacted me again, just silence. It was the ending I'd hoped for, not dramatic confrontation, but quiet erasure. I was finally completely free. Life went on. I kept working, writing my column, covering stories about people who needed voices. The viral article opened doors, speaking invitations, panels, but I was careful which I accepted. Nathan and I started talking seriously about marriage. Julia got promoted. Mrs. Garcia turned 85, and we threw her a party in Dennis's backyard. My backyard now. I planted roses. In June, on what would have been Dennis's 67th birthday, I bought white roses at Pike Place Market and drove to Volunteer Park Cemetery. The headstone was simple. Dennis Michael Grayson, 1958, 2025. He chose love. Hey, Dad, I said, arranging the roses. The article did what you wanted. 6 million people read it. They listened to us. The wind rustled through the trees. I got offers to write a book. I think I'm going to do it. I smiled. You'd probably tell me to negotiate a good advance. Save half, spend half. I pulled out my phone and typed, I miss you. I wish you were here. Then I deleted it. He knew. By September, I'd made my decision. I signed with a small press specializing in trauma memoirs. The advance was modest but fair. Take a year, they said. Write it right. So I sat at Dennis's desk, my desk now, and wrote. Not just the article, but the whole story. Every detail, every moment, every lesson. The note on the fridge and the orange juice glass. The courtroom and the journal and the wedding. The attacks and the will reading. Grief and healing and chosen family. What it means to be forgotten. And what it means to be found. Now, sitting here with September's sun streaming through the window, I'm typing the final lines. The story you just read, this is it. This is the memoir. I wrote it because Dennis asked me to. Because I needed to. Because somewhere out there, there's an 11-year-old kid wondering if anyone sees them. I see you. Build your own family. Write your own story. Claim your place. Don't wait for anyone's permission. You are worth choosing. You always were. I close the laptop and breathe. I did it, I whisper. I told the story. From downstairs, Nathan calls, Maya, dinner's ready. Julia's laugh. Come on, we're starving. Mrs. Garcia's warm voice. I made your favorite Mija. I walk toward the voices, toward the family I chose. In the dining room, the table is set for 5. 4 plates, 4 glasses, 4 chairs with the people I love most. And 1 empty chair at the head of the table where Dennis used to sit with a single white candle burning. Not sadness, just acknowledgement you're still here. Nathan smiles. Julia raises her glass. Mrs. Garcia pats the seat beside her. I sit down and we eat and we laugh and we tell stories and the candle flickers like a heartbeat. Life goes on. Love remains. Family, the real kind, the chosen kind, endures. And for the first time in my life, the story is completely and forever mine. I told it. Now I get to live it. Looking back at my story, I realize that family betrayal isn't just about the people who leave, it's about the ones who stay and choose to harm you when you're most vulnerable. My biological family didn't just abandon me once, they came back 3 times to attack what I'd built. That's family betrayal in its cruelest form. But here's what I learned, family revenge isn't about destroying them. The best family revenge is living well, building a life they can never touch, and refusing to let their toxicity define you. When they crashed Dennis's funeral, when they contested his will, they wanted a reaction. The truest family revenge was my silence and my success. My lessons to you. First, don't wait for people who left to validate you. God puts the right people in your path. Dennis appeared exactly when I needed him most. Trust that. Second blood doesn't make family. Love, loyalty, and showing up, that's what makes family. Don't waste years trying to fix people who chose to break you. Third, document everything. Keep records, save emails, take screenshots. When family betrayal becomes legal, warfare evidence is your shield. Fourth, your story is your power. They wanted to control the narrative. I took it back by writing the truth. God gave you a voice, use it. Fifth, grief and victory can coexist. I won the legal battles, but I still lost Dennis. Allow yourself to feel both. Sixth, set boundaries without guilt. You don't owe toxic people access to your life, your success, or your peace. God honors boundaries. Seventh, the best inheritance isn't money. It's the lessons someone teaches you about worth, resilience, and unconditional love. Don't be like me in one way. Don't wait until someone's gone to tell them they're your father. I said it at his grave. Say it while they can hear you. But do be like me in this fight for your peace. Protect what you've built. And when they try to take it, stand firm and let the truth be your weapon. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Have you experienced family betrayal? How did you find healing? Your story might help someone else feel less alone. Don't forget to share this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about resilience, chosen family, and finding strength in hardship. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Your time and attention mean everything. Important note: the next story will contain some fictional elements and is created for educational purposes. If this content isn't for you, feel free to exit and choose something that better suits your preferences.